Hello, this is Whitney Will from Star Hearth Astrology, and today I'm here to talk to you about Venus's retrograde in Capricorn. So in this video, I'm going to go over the main features and the main transits of her time in Capricorn, give you some pretty technical information about helpful dates and degrees for kind of mapping out the themes of this retrograde. Okay, so let's just get right into it. Okay, so the kind of basic overview of her time in Capricorn and her retrograde there can be broken down into three parts. We have the pre-shadow of the retrograde, which is where Venus has entered the degrees that she will retrograde back over during the retrograde. So we have a month of that from November 17th to December 19th. And then Venus stations retrograde on December 19th and moves backwards through the sky. This is a parent retrograde. The planet is not actually moving backwards. She appears to be moving backwards, conjoins the sun, goes through a process of renewal from December 19th until she stations direct on January 29th. In the middle of the retrograde, she's going to have a Cazimi on January 8th, where she forms an exact conjunction with the sun. This midpoint is often a time where we really get to the heart of the issue and have insights around our desires, our longings, the Venusian topics that we've been reconsidering with Venus's retrograde. And then she will enter the post-shadow period where she's moving over this band of degrees for the third time in direct motion. This is a time of understanding, of integration, of putting things into place. And then once she's clear of the post-shadow, she's kind of onto new territory. But there's a tricky thing about that I'll get into when we go through the transits. So now I'm going to break down the transits kind of day by day, transit by transit, to kind of get you into the nitty-gritty of this retrograde and kind of what's happening inside of it. Okay, so we have November 17th as our first notable date when Venus enters the pre-shadow. She's already been in Capricorn for 2 weeks at this point. She entered Capricorn in early November. She's going to be there all the way until early March. So this is a planet that normally spends about, on average, like a month in a sign. Sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more, but she's slowing down because of this retrograde, and she's going to give us 4 full months of Venus in Capricorn. So she enters the pre-shadow. In the pre-shadow, we start noticing themes of things that will come up. So this can be areas where we're feeling just kind of like lackluster, unmotivated, uninspired, really. Relationship issues that we are just feeling really kind of stuck inside of, relationships to kind of money and objects of value, whether that's kind of what we do for money, our relationship to our own money, our relationship to our stuff. We can start noticing these themes kind of percolate. Then she comes into an exact conjunction with Pluto on December 11th. And this is really important because this is really the key feature of this retrograde, is that Venus stations conjunct Pluto. Now she's still moving direct at this point, but she's very, very slow. And she's within a week of stationing retrograde. And so she's actually within a degree of Pluto from a couple days before this until almost the end of December. So it's not so much that this aspect lasts a day, but that it lasts a couple weeks that we're in Venus-Pluto. So what does that mean and what does that look like? Well, Pluto makes things feel really life or death. Pluto makes things feel really extreme. And so when we combine Venusian themes with Plutonian relationships, what we get is feelings of overwhelm, panic, life or death. Sometimes there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of craziness. We can feel consumed by our desires. We can just see really kind of extreme reactions to things. We can be projecting onto people that they are the most amazing person in the world. We can be feeling like we are the worst and we're completely unlovable, right? There's just a way in which our perception of things is like really all or nothing, which kind of sends us emotionally through this roller coaster pressure, and we feel deeply vulnerable to the things that are happening because they feel so extreme. She's going to station retrograde at about 26.5 degrees of Capricorn on December 19th. This is right before the solstice, right? We're in the dark, dark space of the year, and Venus is going to stop. And so the station, you know, she's going to spend a lot of time here. So if you have anything around 24 to 27 degrees of Capricorn predominantly, but any of the cardinal signs, so Cancer, Aries, or Libra as well, this is really highlighting that. And if you remember back from this fall, the Mercury retrograde in Libra also happened at 25 degrees and square to Pluto. So I think we're seeing, right? And Venus ruled that retrograde because she's the ruler of Libra. So we might see kind of if stuff got swept under the rug during that retrograde in Libra, we're seeing it come out again, but not through this mercurial space of the mind, but in the deep needs and feelings of the heart. Venus forms her second, so this is 2 out of 3, exact conjunction with Pluto on Christmas. So this is, you know, I think this holiday is like, if you can keep it really low key, I would, because there is an edginess and an intensity to these aspects. Our third Saturn-Uranus square will happen just the day before that. We are really kind of in these extreme spaces. And so it definitely, we're in this place where things can boil over really easily because we feel afraid and we feel very vulnerable, or we feel really angry, right? This Venus-Pluto conjunction is prone to extreme reactions. And so we just want to be careful in our personal relationships. I think this is good for the collective. I think, right, we're reevaluating our relationship to consumerism and to capitalism, and Christmas is a big holiday for those themes. The pressure around money around Christmas is so extreme. A lot of people feel a lot of anxiety. A lot of family stuff comes up around Christmas. And this is one where all of the astrology is kind of condensing and putting everything in a pressure cooker. So that is not to terrify you. It's just when we know these things, then we can kind of make safety plans for the situations that we're entering into, so that we're not inadvertently adding to the stress of them. Now, on the 29th, we start to get some Mercury themes coming in. So Mercury conjoins retrograde Venus, right? So they have a little tete-a-tete. Mercury has been in Capricorn since December 13th. And by then it's catching up to a retrograde Venus. And so this is where, right, our mind and our heart can have a little conference around like, what is going on? Things don't seem, you know, if things are not going well, that's hard. If we need some time and space to really think about things, this is a great time. Now, this is also when Mercury enters the shadow of their retrograde. So Mercury is going to go retrograde in the middle of Venus retrograde. And I think really this is the trade-off between the stuff that our hearts and our emotional bodies are absorbing and learning, being translated into the more mercurial places of the mind. And so, right, of course, when we redo our values, we have to think about what are the repercussions and what are the different choices we're going to make in our life. So I actually find that this Mercury retrograde fits in so beautifully. And I think it's this beautiful container for us to kind of, you know, do the mind work of how are we going to change what our daily lives look like, how our communication looks in light of this underworld journey that the more Venusian aspects of us are going through. So Mercury enters the shadow of their retrograde, kind of filled with the thoughts from their conjunction with retrograde Venus. The next day they run into Pluto, which I didn't put in here, but right, Mercury is going to be as involved with Pluto in their retrograde as Venus is with hers. Then we have the cazimi of the retrograde. So that is the point when the sun conjoins Venus. They conjoin at 18 degrees of Capricorn. So again, check your charts. This is another degree that is being illuminated in terms of where we are headed and what we truly desire. The other part about the cazimi is that it's about the midpoint. And generally, if the first half of the retrograde has been really hard, the cazimi is the place where things get a little bit easier. It's almost like we understand how we have been in our own way during the retrograde, and we can kind of begin to find our way out. But if we've dug ourselves into a hole, we still have to like fill in that hole to come back out of it. Or as Austin Coppock, the astrologer, said, at the cazimi point, he was talking about a Mercury retrograde, but you're halfway through the dark forest at the cazimi point, but you still have to go the other halfway. So you're still in the retrograde, but at this point, any direction that you walk gets you back out of it because you're in the center. Okay. A few days after that, Mercury stations retrograde. And Mercury stations retrograde at 10 degrees of Aquarius, which is in a square to Uranus and is almost exactly at the degree that Saturn and Uranus had their square. So Saturn and Uranus, third square that happens on Christmas Eve, happens at 11 degrees of Aquarius. Mercury is going to station retrograde at 10, very close to that. So very likely some of the interruptions, some of the breakthroughs maybe that we experience around the Saturn-Uranus square also get integrated by Mercury's retrograde. A station square to Uranus, though, has a lot of kind of epiphany potential. And so we might just like see, right, this is the thing that I do that I need to stop doing. This is the way that I sabotage my own relationships. So it's ripe for that. Uranus also stations a few days after that. So Uranus stations direct square to Mercury. So again, we've got, with both of these planets slowing down and pausing, an aspect that might normally last a day or two lasts a lot longer because they're heading into that aspect and then they just kind of stop and they sit in it. This is not going to be comfortable, and I'm a little bit worried. I would be worried about anxiety levels because Uranus kind of brings in the energetic charge to things, and Mercury is going to absorb it in the mind and possibly panic about what to do. So that's not to frighten anyone. Again, it's just so that we're prepared for the insights and we can sit in the intensity and realize that it's temporary if we're feeling kind of completely overwhelmed by it. Now, on the 24th of January, Mars enters Capricorn, and this is going to be really important for the post-shadow of Venus retrograde. We've had Venus in Capricorn going through this journey with Pluto, with desires, with kind of the Capricornian themes of the weight of history and oppression and wanting to deal with things in a mature, grown-up, practical manner. And Mars, who is exalted in Capricorn, the warrior, the worker, enters Capricorn, and we have a lot of energy. Mars has kind of been off playing in Sag or going on a holy war, as Mars likes to do. And now it's kind of the rubber meets the road with Mars and Capricorn, and things will get more actionable. So I think the first part of the retrograde, we sit with what's coming up. And then when Mars comes in, we are going to be asked to take more action about those things. But we still have Venus retrograde and Mercury retrograde at this point. So we're still in this kind of reevaluation, but we're just getting a little bit more juice to do things. Okay. Then we have Mercury retrograde back into Capricorn the next day. So, right, Venus has been there. Mercury moves into Aquarius by January 2nd, so Mercury's been in the Aquarius part of its retrograde, and on the 25th, right? So Mars enters Capricorn from the beginning of it on the 24th, and Mercury retrogrades back into Capricorn on the 25th. So now we kind of have our A team and we're all in Capricorn. We're all back to it. Venus stations direct on the 29th at 11 degrees of Capricorn. So again, here is an important degree to look at in your chart. Of the Capricornian degrees, what we have so far are the conjunction with Pluto at 25. We have the station degree at 26. We have the cazimi at 18, and we have this direct station at 11. So so we've got a band in there of about 14 or 15 degrees. Or if you have anything kind of in that band, it's getting highlighted by all of these, and even more so if you have things on the station degrees. On February 3rd, we have Mercury station direct at 24 degrees of Capricorn, conjunct Pluto. So Mercury is stationing direct basically at the degree that Venus stationed retrograde. So Mercury is going back being like, aha, oh, okay, I'm just going to sit here for a while and absorb these lessons and hang out with Pluto, which again can make things seem really black and white, can cause us to have extreme reactions to things. And Mercury's kind of sitting there. This is a really intense transit because of Mercury and because of Pluto. This is not a super fun one. Type 2 fun, because I think it can be really productive and we can have really meaningful insights that last for years from this. So I am excited for it, but I don't think it's going to be for the faint of heart. Okay, on February 16th, we have Mars conjunct Venus, and this conjunction happens at 7 degrees of Capricorn, so almost right on the cazimi degree, right? Which was at 18 degrees of Capricorn. So we get this Mars conjunct Venus. Venus is direct, but she's moving very, very slowly because she's still picking up speed from her direct station. And so Mars comes along and they are going to move together for a month. I mean, they stay within 1 degree of each other from February 11th until March 12th. So they'll have 2 exact conjunctions in that, but they are staying kind of hand in hand for a month. And that is a super unique feature of this retrograde, and kind of, I think, really the headline piece is that as Venus is leaving her retrograde, everything that she's learned, all of these value shifts, all of these changes, Mars is there to kind of make it all happen, but also force it all to happen, right? And they're both in the sign of hard work and discipline and determination in Capricorn. So we get that first conjunction. This is like, I'm thinking about Valentine's Day happening right before this and how like beautiful it is to have a Mars-Venus conjunction on Valentine's Day, but also it's in Capricorn. So it's like you sit down with your partner and you like make your 10-year plan at that point. Then on the 23rd, we have Mercury leaving the post shadow. So Mercury is just kind of like, okay, I have processed that stuff. Here's the plan. We're moving forward. Then by the beginning of March, Venus leaves the post shadow of her retrograde. So it's processed, right? She's on to new territory, but because she and Mars can join Pluto together 2 days later, I really feel like she doesn't leave the post shadow until this conjunction with Pluto, because this is going to be her 3rd conjunction with Pluto in the story of the retrograde, really kind of bringing it about, going into the underworld of the heart, right? And hopefully being blessed at this point by the king of the underworld in her journey of renewal. And she's doing it together with Mars. So there's kind of like picturing like Hades, like as the officiant for the marriage of Venus and Mars. Then they emerge out of Capricorn together, and so they both ingress into Aquarius on the 5th, and they come into their second exact conjunction on the 5th. And this is fascinating to me because they are conjoining at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And if you think back to December 2020, the great conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter that happens every 20 years happened at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And so for all of our day chart people, the day sect, they had their benefic and malefic conjoin at 0 Aquarius. And this is the same transit, but for night chart people having their benefic and malefic conjoin. I think this also signals this kind of journey of, right, Saturn and Jupiter, which can be these kind of ripe with big ideas, these very cerebral, these kind of systemic social planets conjoining on that degree. And then this Venus and Mars conjunction on that degree. Venus and Mars are much more worldly, and they're much more involved with the material space and the earth. And so they can join. And I feel like that's kind of like the download point. Like finally we see that manifested in more earthly ways. So I'll keep you guys posted on that, because obviously I'm very excited about this. But they come around and they emerge out of this Capricornian underworld journey together at 0 degrees of Aquarius, kind of ready to go. And this is also really interesting because about a year from now, Pluto will exit Capricorn and hit 0 degrees of Aquarius. So we're seeing this kind of space of 0 degrees of Aquarius get highlighted so in these very potent ways. And then Venus starts speeding up. And so she will leave Mars behind kind of a week after this, but they have had a month together, when normally a Venus-Mars conjunction happens, it's like in orb and out of orb within a few days. And so this is really a unique thing that happens. And yeah, so I kind of wish it weren't happening so close to the sun, because it would be easier to see it in the sky, but yeah, but Venus never gets too far from the sun. So yeah, so then they separate. And that, I think, is really the where we move on to new territory from these themes. So that was a lot of information. If you would like help integrating this into your birth chart, I am doing mini 30-minute Venus retrograde readings to kind of help you put all of this information into your birth chart, connect with the themes that are already coming up for you as we're in the pre-shadow, and really help you sink into this retrograde and get the most out of it. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this kind of walkthrough in this narrative arc of this. And yeah, I hope you all have a very renewing experience of Venus's retrograde in Capricorn. Okay. Bye.